The whispers started the moment Sarah Prescott stepped out of the boarding house wearing a black silk gown that seemed to swallow the morning light whole, and by the time she reached the small wooden church at the edge of Brownsville, Texas, half the town had gathered to witness what they were already calling the scandal of 1873. Sarah kept her eyes forward, her gloved hands steady despite the trembling in her chest. The dress had been her mother's, carefully preserved in cedar and lavender for 15 years, and wearing it today felt like carrying her family's memory down the aisle rather than abandoning it. Behind her she could hear Mrs. Henderson's shocked gasp, followed by the hushed chorus of disapproval that rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. "Black at her own wedding," someone muttered. "It is an omen." Poor Gerald Whitmore. What kind of wife wears mourning to her marriage? Sarah's steps faltered for just a moment. Gerald had been kind when he proposed 3 months ago, offering her a way out of the poverty that had plagued her since her father's death 2 years prior. Her mother had died when Sarah was just 8, taken by yellow fever that swept through South Texas like a vengeful spirit. Her father had followed, crushed beneath a falling beam at the lumber mill where he worked 12 hours a day trying to keep them fed. At 21, Sarah had nothing left but her seamstress skills and the small room she rented above the general store. She had accepted Gerald's proposal because it was practical, because it was safe, because refusing meant watching her small savings dwindle to nothing. But she had been honest with him about the dress. "I want to wear my mother's gown," she had told him quietly one evening as they sat on the boarding house porch. "It is black because she died before she could wear the dress she had made for renewing her vows with my father. But it means something to me. It is all I have left of her." Gerald had smiled that patient smile of his, the one that never quite reached his eyes. "Of course, Sarah. Whatever you wish." Now, standing at the church entrance with the October sun beating down on the dusty streets of Brownsville, Sarah wondered if he had truly understood, or if he had simply agreed because he never really listened to her at all. The church doors stood open, revealing the simple interior with its rough-hewn pews and small gathering of guests. Gerald stood at the altar in his Sunday best, his pale face arranged in what might have been a smile or a grimace. Beside him, his brother Richard looked positively gleeful at the spectacle, already composing the story he would tell at the saloon later. Sarah took a breath and stepped forward. That was when she heard the horse. The sound of hooves pounding against packed earth cut through the whispers like a knife, and the crowd turned as one to see a rider approaching at full gallop. The horse was a magnificent roan, its coat gleaming with sweat, and the man astride it looked like something out of a frontier legend. Liam Harrison was known throughout the Rio Grande Valley as a tracker and guide, a man who could survive weeks in the Chihuahuan desert with nothing but his knife and his wits. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders that strained against his buckskin shirt and arms corded with muscle earned from years of hard living. His dark hair fell past his shoulders, tied back with a leather cord, and his weathered face bore the marks of sun and wind and a life lived entirely on his own terms. Sarah had seen him twice before, once 3 years ago when he had brought supplies through town on his way north, and again 6 months past when he had stopped at the general store for ammunition and coffee. Both times she had felt something stir in her chest that she could not name, something wild and dangerous that had no place in her carefully controlled life. He pulled his horse to a stop in a cloud of dust, his dark eyes scanning the crowd before landing on her. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Liam dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the ground with a solid thud. He wore a gun belt low on his hips, a Colt revolver secured in its holster, and a large knife strapped to his thigh. Everything about him spoke of capability and strength, of a man who had learned to rely on himself because there was no one else in the wild places he called home. "Sarah Prescott," he said, his voice carrying easily across the hushed crowd. It was a deep voice, rough-edged but not unkind. She stared at him, her heart suddenly pounding against her ribs. "Mr. Harrison." He walked toward her with the easy, measured gait of a predator, his eyes never leaving hers. When he stopped, he was close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough to smell leather and sage and something wild that made her dizzy. "I heard you were getting married," he said. "You heard correctly." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "And I heard folks saying you were wearing black to your wedding, that it was shameful." He looked down at her dress, his expression thoughtful. "But that's not why you wore it, is it?" Sarah felt her throat tighten. "No. You wore it because it belonged to someone you loved, someone you lost." His voice softened, just a fraction. "You wore it because you honor the past, and you are not ashamed of where you came from or what you have survived." Tears pricked at her eyes, hot and unexpected. In 3 sentences, this near stranger had understood what Gerald had never bothered to see. "Yes," she whispered. Liam nodded slowly. Then he did something that sent a shock through the entire crowd. He pulled off his hat and held it against his chest in a gesture of respect. "Then you are the bravest woman I have ever met, and any man would be honored to stand beside you." The silence that followed was absolute. Gerald's voice cut through it, high and tight with indignation. "What is the meaning of this? Sarah, come inside at once. We have guests waiting." Sarah looked between them. Gerald, pale and soft-handed, a clerk at his father's bank who had never missed a meal or spent a night under the stars. And Liam, this mountain of a man who looked at her like she was something precious and wild, something worth crossing miles of desert to see. "I cannot do this," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "What?" Gerald's face flushed red. "Sarah, do not be ridiculous. We have an agreement." "An agreement is not a marriage," Liam said quietly, but there was steel beneath the words. "This is none of your concern, Harrison." Gerald stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides. "You have no right to interfere." "I have every right to speak my mind." Liam's posture did not change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "And I'm saying that a woman like Sarah Prescott deserves a man who understands her heart, not one who sees her as a convenient arrangement." "How dare you?" Gerald sputtered. "I've been nothing but kind to her." "Kind is not enough," Liam said. He turned back to Sarah, his voice dropping so that only she could hear. "Listen to me. I know I have no claim on you. I know I am just a man who passes through town every few months, and you have no reason to trust me. But I have thought about you every day since I last saw you 6 months ago. I have ridden 3 days straight because I heard you were marrying, and I could not let it happen without telling you the truth." "What truth?" Sarah could barely breathe. "The cheat. That you deserve more than settling. That you deserve someone who will love every part of you, including the parts that hurt, the parts that remember, the parts that honor your dead by wearing black silk to a wedding." His hand reached out, hovering near hers but not quite touching. "I am not asking you to marry me instead. I am not asking you for anything. I am just asking you to think about what you truly want before you walk through those doors." Sarah looked down at her black dress, at the careful stitching her mother had put into every seam. She thought about the years since her death, the loneliness, the struggle, the slow erosion of hope. She thought about Gerald's patient smile and his dry kisses and the way he had never once asked her about her dreams. And she thought about the feeling that had stirred in her chest when she first saw Liam Harrison, that wild, dangerous thing that whispered of possibilities she had never dared imagine. "I cannot marry you, Gerald," she said, louder now, turning to face the church. "I am sorry. I thought I could, but I cannot." The crowd erupted in shocked exclamations. Gerald's face went from red to white in an instant. "You are making a terrible mistake," he said coldly. "You will regret this." "Maybe," Sarah agreed, "but at least it will be my mistake to make." She turned back to Liam, her heart racing. "I do not know what happens next." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming it from merely handsome to something that made her knees weak. "Neither do I, but I have a horse, and I know a place about 10 miles north where the Rio Grande runs clear and the cottonwoods make shade thick enough to keep out the noon sun. We could ride there and talk, really talk, without half the town listening in." Sarah glanced back at the church, at Gerald's furious face and the scandalized guests. She thought about her room above the general store, about the life she had been trying to build out of scraps and determination. Then she looked at Liam's outstretched hand. "I've never ridden on horseback before," she admitted. "I will keep you safe," he said simply. "I promise you that." Sarah took his hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm and solid, and when his fingers closed around hers, she felt something inside her chest crack open like an egg, spilling light. Liam led her to his horse, and before she could think about logistics or propriety, he had placed his hands on her waist and lifted her into the saddle as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. The strength in his arms was undeniable, and Sarah found herself gripping the saddle horn as he swung up behind her. His chest pressed against her back, solid and warm, and when his arms came around her to take the reins, she felt safer than she had in years. "Hold on," he murmured near her ear, and then they were moving, cantering away from the church and the scandalized crowd, and the life Sarah had almost resigned herself to living. Behind them, she could hear Gerald shouting, hear Mrs. Henderson's shocked wails, hear the town erupting in gossip that would last for months. But ahead of them lay the open road, the wild Texas landscape, and the promise of something she had not felt since her father died. Hope. They rode in silence for the first mile, leaving Brownsville behind in a trail of dust. The October heat was beginning to build, but the wind created by their movement kept it bearable. Sarah found herself relaxing against Liam's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, the sure way he guided the horse around obstacles and rough patches. "Are you all right?" he asked after a while. "I think so," Sarah said. "I think I might be better than all right. Is that strange?" "No." She could hear the smile in his voice. "I think that is called feeling free." "I have just destroyed my reputation," Sarah pointed out. "I will be the scandal of Brownsville for the next decade." "Does that bother you?" She considered the question seriously. "Less than it should, perhaps. I have been so worried about what everyone thinks of me, about being respectable and proper, that I forgot to think about what I want." "And what do you want?" The question hung in the air between them, vast and terrifying and full of possibility. Sarah watched the landscape roll past, the scrubby mesquite and prickly pear, the distant blue line of mountains on the horizon. This was wild country, harsh and beautiful, and it demanded honesty from those who lived in it. "I want to feel alive," she said finally. "I want to stop being afraid all the time. I want someone who sees me, really sees me, not just a convenient solution to loneliness." Liam's arms tightened around her slightly. "I see you, Sarah Prescott. I've seen you since the first time I walked into that general store and watched you stand up to old Tom Henderson when he tried to shortchange a Mexican farmer. You were fierce and fair, and you did not back down even when Henderson threatened to have you fired. I have seen you every moment since, even when I was 100 miles away." Sarah's breath caught. "I remember that day. I remember you." "Good," he said softly, "because I am not a man who plays games or makes pretty speeches. I live hard and I live honest. If I tell you something, it is true." "Then tell me true, Liam Harrison. Why did you really ride 3 days to stop my wedding?" "Because I love you," he said simply. "Because I fell in love with you 3 years ago and tried to talk myself out of it 1,000 times. Because I am a man who sleeps under stars and tracks through mountains and has nothing to offer but a hard life and a loyal heart. But I could not let you marry another man without telling you that you have options, that you do not have to settle for kindness when you could have passion." Sarah twisted in the saddle to look back at him, nearly unseating herself in the process. Liam steadied her with one strong arm, his eyes searching hers. "You love me?" she asked, needing to hear it again. "I love you," he confirmed, "and I understand if you cannot love me back. I understand if what I am offering sounds like madness, but I needed you to know before you made a choice you could not unmake." Sarah reached up and touched his face, feeling the roughness of several days' beard, the warmth of sun-darkened skin. "I do not know if what I feel is love yet," she said honestly, "but I know that when I saw you today, I felt something I have never felt with Gerald, something that scared me and thrilled me all at once, and I know that I want the chance to find out what that feeling becomes." Liam turned his face into her palm, pressing a kiss there that sent heat racing through her veins. "That's all I ask. A chance." They rode on, following a trail that led away from the main road toward the river. The land here was greener, fed by the Rio Grande's water, and the cottonwoods rose like sentinels along the banks. Liam guided his horse down a gentle slope to a spot where the river curved, creating a natural pool that reflected the sky like polished glass. He dismounted first, then reached up to help Sarah down. His hands spanned her waist easily, and he lowered her to the ground with care, as if she were something precious. When her feet touched earth, he did not immediately let go, and Sarah found herself standing within the circle of his arms, looking up at him. "You are even more beautiful than I remembered," Liam said quietly. "And that black dress is not mourning. It is armor. It is memory made visible. It is you telling the world that you carry your past with honor, and anyone who cannot see that does not deserve your future." Sarah felt tears spill over, tracking down her cheeks. "How do you understand that when no one else did?" "Because I carry my own past," Liam said. He released her slowly and walked to the river's edge, staring out across the water. "My family came west when I was 14. Pa wanted a ranch in Montana, thought we could make something of ourselves in that big sky country. We made it as far as Wyoming before Sioux raiders hit our wagon train. My parents died in the first volley. My sister Mary lived long enough to tell me to run, to survive, to remember them." Sarah moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his. "I am so sorry." "It was 17 years ago," Liam said, "but I still remember every detail of their faces. I still hear Mary singing while she did the washing. And I wear this." He pulled aside his shirt collar to reveal a leather cord from which hung a small silver cross. "It was my mother's. I wear it every day, even though I am not sure I believe in her God anymore. I wear it because it reminds me that I come from people who loved me, who sacrificed for me, who made me who I am. You understand?" Sarah breathed. "You truly understand." "I understand that the past is not something to be ashamed of or hidden away," Liam said. He turned to face her fully, his hands coming up to cradle her face. "And I understand that a woman who wears black silk to honor her mother is a woman of strength and conviction. Those qualities are rarer than gold and more valuable than anything I could find in these mountains." Sarah leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "I was so afraid. After Papa died, I had nothing. No family, no prospects, no future I could see clearly. When Gerald proposed, I thought it was my only chance at security. But security without passion is just another kind of prison, is it not?" "It is," Liam agreed. "I have met plenty of folks who traded their dreams for safety, and they all had the same look in their eyes, like they were already dead but their bodies had not figured it out yet. I do not want to be one of those people. You will not be. Not if I have anything to say about it." Liam's thumb traced her cheekbone gently. "Sarah, I need to be clear with you about what kind of life I lead. I am not a town man. I cannot live behind walls, working at a desk, measuring my days in routine. I guide wagon trains through mountain passes. I trap and hunt and trade with the Comanche and the Apache. I spend weeks at a time in the wilderness, and when I do come to town, it is only long enough to resupply before I head back out." "That sounds like freedom," Sarah said softly. "It is freedom," Liam confirmed, "but it is also hardship. It is sleeping on cold ground and eating game you killed that morning. It is danger from animals and weather and men who would kill you for your supplies. It is loneliness." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "But it does not have to be lonely. Not if you were with me." Sarah's heart jumped. "Are you asking me to come with you?" "I'm asking you to consider it," Liam said carefully. "Not right now, not today. But eventually, when you have had time to think about what you truly want. I have a cabin in the Davis Mountains, about 200 miles northwest of here. It is rough but solid, with a good spring nearby and enough game to keep us fed. I built it 5 years ago as a base, somewhere to winter and store supplies. It could be a home if you wanted it to be." Sarah tried to imagine it. Leaving Brownsville, leaving the only life she had ever known, to go into the wilderness with a man she barely knew. It should have terrified her. A sensible woman would refuse immediately, would insist on propriety and chaperones and a proper courtship. But Sarah had never felt less sensible in her life. "Show me," she said impulsively. "Take me to see this cabin. Let me see what that life would look like before I decide." Liam's eyes widened. "That's a week's journey, Sarah. Maybe more if we take our time. The terrain is rough, and we would be alone the entire way. Your reputation would be destroyed beyond repair." "My reputation is already destroyed," Sarah pointed out. "I just ran out on my wedding in front of half the town. What difference does another scandal make? The difference is that one scandal can be explained away given time, Liam said seriously. But if you come with me, if you disappear into the mountains with me for weeks, there will be no coming back from that. You would have to marry me, or you would be ruined. And if I decide I want to marry you, Liam was quiet for a long moment, studying her face, then I would be the luckiest man alive. But Sarah, I will not take advantage of your situation. You are vulnerable right now, running from a wedding, scared about your future. I will not let you make a choice in haste that you will regret later. Sarah felt a surge of affection for this careful, honorable man. Gerald had never worried about what she wanted or whether she was making a good choice. He had simply assumed she would be grateful for his proposal and had never looked deeper than that. What if we compromise, she suggested. Take me to your cabin, but let us travel slowly. Give me time to learn about you, about the life you lead. If I decide it is not for me, you can bring me back to Brownsville, and I will face whatever consequences come. But if I decide I want to stay, if I decide I want to build a life with you, then we can talk about marriage. Liam considered this, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he nodded. That is fair, but I want you to promise me something. What? Promise me that you will be honest. If you are scared or uncomfortable or change your mind, you will tell me immediately. I need to know that you are choosing this with your eyes open, not because you feel trapped or obligated. I promise, Sarah said. She held out her hand. Do we have an agreement, Mr. Harrison? Liam took her hand and shook it firmly, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. We have an agreement, Miss Prescott. Then his expression grew serious again. But we should start tomorrow. Today has been overwhelming enough, and you need supplies if we are going to travel. Let me take you back to town so you can gather what you need. We can leave at first light. Sarah shook her head. If I go back today, I will lose my courage. Gerald will come to talk me around, or Mrs. Henderson will convince me I am making a terrible mistake, or I will simply lie awake all night terrified of what I am doing. No, if we are going to do this, we should leave now. You are wearing a black silk dress, Liam pointed out. Riding clothes would be more practical. Sarah looked down at her beautiful, impractical gown. I have a shawl in my reticule for when the evening gets cold. It will have to do until we reach a town where I can buy something more suitable. Liam studied her for a moment, then slowly nodded. You are certain? I'm certain that I want to try, Sarah said. I'm certain that I would rather take a risk with you than play it safe with someone who never really saw me. Beyond that, I cannot promise anything. But is that not what you wanted? Honesty? It is exactly what I wanted, Liam said softly. He pulled a bedroll from his saddle and spread it on the grass beneath the cottonwoods. Then we will rest here for a few hours, let the heat of the day pass, and head out this evening. The Davis Mountains are northwest, and the first leg of the journey will take us through some rough country. Are you prepared for that? Sarah sat down on the bedroll, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. The emotional weight of the day was catching up with her, making her limbs heavy. I am as prepared as I can be, given that I have never traveled further than 10 miles from Brownsville in my entire life. Liam settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Then I will teach you how to read the land, how to find water, how to stay safe. You are smart and brave, Sarah. You will learn quickly. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the river flow past. Sarah found her eyes growing heavy, the warmth and the stress of the day combining to pull her toward sleep. Without thinking, she leaned against Liam's shoulder, and his arm came around her automatically, holding her secure. Rest, he murmured. I will keep watch. Sarah wanted to protest that she was not so fragile that she needed watching, but the truth was that she felt safer than she had in years, wrapped in the strength of this mountain man's embrace. She let her eyes close, let the sound of the river and the birds lull her into a doze. When she woke, the sun had moved considerably toward the western horizon, and Liam was still exactly as she had left him, his arm around her shoulders, his eyes scanning the landscape with the automatic vigilance of someone who had learned never to let his guard down completely. How long was I asleep? Sarah asked, sitting up and trying to smooth her hair. A few hours, Liam said. You needed it. Are you hungry? Sarah's stomach answered for her, growling audibly. She laughed, embarrassed. I suppose I am. I was too nervous to eat breakfast this morning. Liam reached into his saddlebag and pulled out some dried meat and hardtack. It is not fancy, but it will keep your strength up. Sarah took the food gratefully, biting into the jerky and finding it surprisingly flavorful, seasoned with salt and pepper and something else she could not identify. This is good. I make it myself, Liam said. Deer meat mostly, though sometimes elk if I am up north. The secret is in the seasoning and how long you smoke it. They ate together, and Sarah found herself relaxing further. There was something deeply comfortable about Liam's presence, despite the extraordinary circumstances. He did not fill every silence with chatter, did not feel the need to perform or impress. He simply was, solid and real, and present in a way that made her feel anchored. "Tell me about the Davis Mountains," Sarah said. "What is it like there?" Liam's eyes took on a distant look, and when he spoke, his voice was warm with affection. "It is some of the most beautiful country you will ever see. The mountains rise up out of the desert like islands, covered in pine and juniper at the higher elevations. There are valleys filled with grass where deer and elk graze, and at night you can see more stars than you knew existed. The air is clean and cold, even in summer, and in winter the snow comes down soft and quiet, covering everything in white." "It sounds like paradise," Sarah said softly. "It can be," Liam agreed, "but it is also unforgiving. Water is scarce in places, and you have to know where to find the springs. There are mountain lions and bears, and in winter the cold can kill you if you are not prepared. The nearest town is Fort Davis, about 15 miles from my cabin, and even that is just a small military outpost. You can go weeks without seeing another soul." "And you like that?" Sarah asked curiously. "The solitude?" "I have liked it," Liam said carefully. "After my family died, I found it hard to be around people. Everyone wanted to offer sympathy or advice, and all I wanted was to be left alone with my grief. So I went into the mountains, and I learned to survive, and eventually I learned to thrive. But lately, the solitude has started to feel less like freedom and more like loneliness. I would catch myself wishing I had someone to share a sunset with, someone to talk to by the fire at night, someone to build a life with instead of just surviving day to day." He turned to look at her, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she suspected was rare for him. "And then I saw you in that general store, and I knew. I knew that you were the person I wanted to share those sunsets with, but I also knew I had no right to ask it of you, not when you had a whole life in Brownsville, and I had nothing but wild country and a rough cabin to offer." "You have more than that," Sarah said firmly. "You have strength and honor and kindness. You have the courage to live on your own terms and the wisdom to understand what truly matters. That is more than most men can say." Liam reached out and tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "You are extraordinary, Sarah Prescott." "I am ordinary," Sarah corrected, "but perhaps being with you will make me less so." "No," Liam said. "You were never ordinary. You just lived in a place that could not see how special you are." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, unaccustomed to such direct praise. Gerald had complimented her appearance occasionally, but he had never spoken about her character or her spirit. He had never looked at her the way Liam was looking at her now, as if she were something precious and wild and worth crossing deserts to find. "We should get moving," Liam said, though he seemed reluctant to break the moment. "I want to put some distance between us and Brownsville before dark. There's a good camping spot about 10 miles northwest near a creek. We can spend the night there and set out fresh in the morning." Sarah stood, brushing off her black dress and trying to restore some order to her appearance. It was a losing battle, but she did her best. Liam rolled up the bedroll and secured it to his saddle, then checked his weapons and supplies with the automatic efficiency of long practice. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. Sarah took it, letting him help her into the saddle before he swung up behind her. His arms came around her again, and Sarah found herself leaning back against his chest, feeling safe and reckless all at once. They rode northwest, following trails that were barely visible to Sarah's untrained eye, but that Liam navigated with easy confidence. The landscape began to change gradually, the flat coastal plains giving way to rolling hills covered in mesquite and prickly pear. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold that took Sarah's breath away. "It is beautiful," she murmured. "Wait until you see the mountains," Liam said. "This is just the beginning." They reached the creek just as the last light was fading from the sky. Liam found a spot sheltered by cottonwoods and helped Sarah down, then set about making camp with practiced efficiency. He built a small fire, using dry mesquite wood that produced little smoke, then unpacked more food from his saddlebags. Sarah watched him work, fascinated by the economy of his movements. Everything he did served a purpose and nothing was wasted. When he pulled out a small pot and set it on the fire, she leaned forward curiously. "What are you making?" "Coffee," Liam said, "and some beans if you are willing to wait for them to heat through." "I can wait," Sarah said. She wrapped her arms around her knees, watching the flames dance. "Liam, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you ever regret it? The life you have chosen? Do you ever wish you had settled down, found a wife, had a normal life in a town somewhere?" Liam was quiet for a moment, pouring water into the pot and measuring out coffee grounds. "I used to think about it sometimes," he admitted, "especially when I would see families in the towns I passed through. A man with his wife and children, all of them together, safe and warm. There was a part of me that envied that, but I could never quite make myself stay. The walls would start closing in, and I would feel like I could not breathe, and I would have to leave." "And now?" Sarah asked softly. "Now I think maybe I was waiting for the right reason to stay," Liam said. He looked up at her, the firelight reflecting in his dark eyes. "I think maybe I was waiting for you." Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. "That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you barely know." "I know," Liam acknowledged, "and I do not mean to say that you are responsible for my happiness or that I need you to complete me. I am whole on my own, but I think you could make me better, and I hope I could make you happy." "I think you could," Sarah said honestly. "I think you already are." They ate the simple meal Liam prepared, and Sarah found that even beans and coffee tasted better when shared beside a campfire under an endless sky. After they finished, Liam showed her how he secured his camp for the night, hanging their food from a tree branch to keep it away from animals and checking the perimeter for any signs of danger. "You will sleep here," he said, spreading out his bedroll near the fire. "I will sleep on the other side, close enough to protect you but far enough to preserve your modesty." Sarah felt a flash of disappointment that she knew she should not feel. They had only just met, really, and despite the intensity of the day's events, she barely knew this man. But there was something about him that made her want to close the distance between them, to feel his arms around her again, the way they had been on the horse. "Thank you," she said instead, settling onto the bedroll and pulling the blanket up around her shoulders. The October night was cooling rapidly, and she was grateful for the warmth of the fire. Liam added another log to the flames, then settled on his own bedroll across from her. The firelight played across his features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the breadth of his shoulders, the way his long hair fell across his face when he leaned forward to adjust the logs. "Liam," Sarah said softly. "Yes? Thank you for today. For stopping my wedding, for seeing me when no one else did, for giving me a choice when I thought I had none." "You always had a choice, Sarah," Liam said gently. "You just needed someone to remind you of that." They fell silent, and gradually the sounds of the night surrounded them. Crickets sang in the grass, a night bird called somewhere in the distance, and the creek burbled softly over its rocky bed. Sarah stared up at the stars, seeing them truly for the first time in her life. In Brownsville, there had always been the glow of lamps and the smoke from chimneys obscuring the view. But out here, the sky was a vast canvas of light, so many stars that they seemed to blur together in places, forming a luminous river across the heavens. "The Milky Way," Liam said, noticing where she was looking. "The Comanche have a story about it. They say it is the path that spirits take when they leave this world, traveling to the happy hunting grounds beyond." "It is beautiful," Sarah breathed. "You should see it from the mountains," Liam said. "Up high, where the air is thin and clear, the stars look close enough to touch. I have spent hours lying on my back watching them, trying to count them all and always losing track." "Will you show me?" Sarah asked. "When we get to your cabin?" "I will show you everything," Liam promised. "Every beautiful thing I have found in this wild country, I will share with you." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. She had made the right choice today. She was certain of that now. Whatever came next, whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with Liam beside her. And that was enough. She fell asleep to the sound of his breathing, steady and sure, and for the first time in 2 years, she did not dream of loss and loneliness. Instead, she dreamed of mountains and stars and strong arms holding her safe. Sarah woke to the smell of coffee and the soft gray light of dawn. She sat up, disoriented for a moment, before memory came flooding back. The wedding, Liam's arrival, her impulsive decision to leave everything behind. It should have felt terrifying in the morning light, but instead, she felt lighter than she had in years. Liam was crouched by the fire, heating water in his battered pot. He looked up when she stirred and smiled, the expression transforming his serious face into something that made her breath catch. "Good morning," he said. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Sarah admitted. She ran her hands through her tangled hair, trying to restore some order. "What time is it?" "Just past dawn," Liam said. "We should get moving soon if we want to make good time, but have some coffee first, and there's more jerky if you are hungry." Sarah accepted the tin cup he offered, wrapping her hands around it gratefully. The morning air was cool, and the coffee's warmth was welcome. She sipped it slowly, watching as Liam efficiently broke down their camp, packing everything away with the same practiced ease he did everything. "How far will we travel today?" she asked. 30 miles, maybe 40 if the terrain cooperates," Liam said. "We will be following the old wagon trail northwest for a while, then cutting cross-country once we reach the hills. It will be rougher going once we leave the trail, but it will save us time." Sarah nodded, trying to imagine covering 40 miles on horseback. Her legs and back already ached from the previous day's ride, but she was determined not to complain. She had chosen this path, and she would see it through. They set out as soon as the camp was cleared, riding into the rising sun. The black silk dress that had caused such scandal the day before was already dusty and wrinkled, and Sarah found she did not care. It was just a dress, after all, just fabric and thread. The meaning she had attached to it was still there, carried in her heart rather than on her back. As they rode, Liam pointed out features of the landscape, teaching her to read the land the way he did. He showed her how to find water by watching where birds flew in the evening, how to tell which plants were edible and which were poison, how to identify animal tracks in the dust. That is javelina," he said, pointing to small hoof prints near a cluster of prickly pear. "They travel in groups and are mostly harmless unless you corner them. And those over there are deer tracks, probably a small herd that came down to the creek to drink before dawn." Sarah absorbed it all, fascinated by this new world unfolding around her. She had lived in Texas her entire life, but had never truly seen it, never understood the complexity and beauty of the landscape beyond the borders of Brownsville. Around midday, they stopped to rest the horse and eat. Liam found a spot in the shade of a rock outcropping, and they sat together, passing a canteen back and forth. "How are you holding up?" Liam asked, studying her face with concern. "I am sore," Sarah admitted, "but otherwise all right. How much further until we reach the Davis Mountains?" "About a week, maybe a bit less," Liam said, "but we will take our time. There's no need to push hard, and I want you to be comfortable." "I am comfortable," Sarah said. Then, more honestly, or at least, I am as comfortable as I can be while wearing a silk dress on horseback in the middle of nowhere. Liam laughed, a rich, warm sound that made Sarah smile in response. "We can stop in Fort Stockton tomorrow," he said. "It is a couple days' ride from here, but they will have a general store where you can buy more practical clothes, and we can get you your own horse if you are willing to learn to ride." "I would like that," Sarah said. "I cannot expect you to carry me the entire way." "I do not mind carrying you," Liam said softly. His hand found hers, his calloused fingers interlacing with her smaller, softer ones. "But I understand wanting your own independence. That is part of who you are." They rode on through the afternoon, the landscape growing gradually more rugged. The flat coastal plain had given way entirely to rolling hills, and in the far distance Sarah could see the blue shadows of mountains rising against the horizon. "The Davis Mountains?" she asked, pointing. "No," Liam said. "Those are the Santiago Mountains. The Davis Range is still a few days north, but we're getting closer." That evening, they made camp near a spring that bubbled up from between rocks, creating a small pool of clear water. Liam showed Sarah how to refill their canteens, explaining the importance of always knowing where the next water source was in this dry country. "Water is life out here," he said seriously. "You can survive without food for days, even weeks if you are tough. But without water, you will die in less than 3 days, maybe sooner if the sun is hot. So you always know where the water is, and you never pass a good source without filling every container you have." Sarah nodded, committing the lesson to memory. She was beginning to understand that survival in this wild country was about knowledge as much as strength, about understanding the land and working with it rather than against it. That night, as they sat by the fire, Sarah found herself asking the question that had been on her mind all day. "Liam, why me?" He looked up from the stick he had been whittling, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, why me specifically?" Sarah clarified. "You are handsome and strong and capable. You could have any woman you wanted. Why ride 3 days to stop my wedding? Why decide I was the one you wanted to build a life with?" Liam set aside his whittling and gave her his full attention. "Do you remember the first time we met? 3 years ago in front of the general store?" "I remember," Sarah said. "You were loading supplies onto a pack horse." "And you were arguing with Tom Henderson," Liam said. "That Mexican farmer had brought in a load of firewood to sell, and Henderson was trying to pay him half what the wood was worth, claiming it was poor quality. But you stepped in and told Henderson that the wood was fine and that he should pay the agreed-upon price. Henderson got angry, said it was none of your business, but you did not back down. You stood there, all of 5 feet tall and skinny as a rail, and stared down a man twice your size until he paid that farmer what he owed." Sarah felt her cheeks flush. "I remember. Papa had always taught me to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard." "Exactly," Liam said. "And I watched that whole exchange, and I thought to myself, there is a woman with a spine of steel. There is someone who does not just talk about doing right, she actually does it, even when it costs her something. And then later, I saw you in the store, and you were kind to Mrs. Chen when she came in with her children. Most folks in Brownsville would not even look at the Chinese families who lived on the edge of town, but you talked to her like she was a person, asked about her children, treated her with respect." "She was a person," Sarah said simply. "Why would I treat her any other way?" "That's exactly my point," Liam said. "You have this core of decency in you, this fundamental belief in treating people right regardless of who they are or where they come from. That is rare, Sarah. Most people talk a good game, but when it comes down to it, they are only kind to people who can do something for them in return. But you are kind because it is the right thing to be." Sarah looked down at her hands, overwhelmed by his words. "I'm not special, Liam. I just try to live by the principles my parents taught me." "That makes you special," Liam insisted. "Plenty of people are taught good principles. Not everyone has the strength to live by them when it is inconvenient." He reached across the space between them and tilted her chin up so she was looking at him. "You asked me why you. That is why. Because you are good, clear through to your bones. And I have been looking for someone like you my entire life." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. "What if I disappoint you? What if I am not as good as you think I am?" "Then you will still be better than anyone else I have ever met," Liam said. He brushed away the tear that escaped down her cheek with his thumb. "Sarah, I am not expecting perfection. I am expecting you, with all your strengths and flaws and contradictions. That is what I want. That is what I am offering you in return. Just me, exactly as I am." Sarah leaned forward and, before she could overthink it, pressed her lips to his. It was a tentative kiss, soft and questioning, but Liam responded immediately. His hand cupped the back of her head, his fingers threading through her hair, and he kissed her back with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his size and strength. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Liam rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you in that black dress," he admitted. "I have been wanting you to do that since you lifted me onto your horse," Sarah confessed. Liam laughed softly, then pulled back far enough to look at her seriously. "Sarah, I want to court you properly. I know circumstances are unusual and we are alone out here, but I do not want to rush things. I do not want you to feel pressured or obligated." "I do not feel pressured," Sarah assured him, "but I appreciate your respect. Let us take our time, learn about each other properly. When we reach your cabin, if I decide I want to stay, we can talk about the future then." "Agreed," Liam said. He kissed her forehead gently, then moved back to his side of the fire. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow is another long day of riding." Sarah settled into her bedroll, her heart still racing from the kiss. She had never felt this way with Gerald, had never experienced this heady combination of desire and respect and genuine liking. With Gerald, everything had been lukewarm, safe, predictable. With Liam, she felt fully alive for the first time in years. The next few days fell into a rhythm. They would rise at dawn, ride until midday, rest during the worst of the afternoon heat, then continue until evening. Each night, Liam would teach her something new: how to build a fire with damp wood, how to set snares for rabbits, how to orient herself by the stars, and each night they would sit by the fire and talk, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Sarah learned that Liam had spent 2 years after his family's death living with a Comanche band who had found him half dead from exposure and starvation. They had taught him their ways, their language, their deep understanding of the land. When he finally left, it was with their blessing and a promise to always honor the things they had taught him. "They saved my life," Liam said, "not just physically, but in every way that matters. They taught me that surviving is not enough, that you have to find a reason to live. And they taught me to see the land not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a partner to be respected." Sarah, in turn, told him about her life in Brownsville, about the years after her mother's death, when it had been just her and her father, scraping by but happy. She told him about her father's death, about the crushing loneliness that had followed, about the slow erosion of hope as she watched her savings dwindle and her options narrow. "Gerald seemed like a lifeline," she admitted. "I knew I did not love him, but I thought maybe love would come with time, or maybe it did not matter as much as security. But the closer the wedding got, the more trapped I felt, like I was choosing safety over everything that made life worth living." "You deserve both," Liam said firmly. "You deserve to be safe and to be happy. Those things are not mutually exclusive." On the 4th day, they reached Fort Stockton, a dusty town built around a military post. Liam led them to a modest hotel, securing 2 separate rooms, then took Sarah to the general store. "Pick out whatever you need," he said. "Clothes, supplies, anything you think will make the journey more comfortable." Sarah hesitated, looking at the prices. "Liam, I cannot afford all this. I have a little money saved, but not much." "I am paying," Liam said, "and before you argue, consider it an investment. If you decide to stay with me, you will need proper gear. And if you decide to go back to Brownsville, consider it payment for putting up with my company for a week." Sarah wanted to protest, but the practicality of his argument won out. She selected a split riding skirt, several simple blouses, a warm jacket, sturdy boots, and a wide-brimmed hat to keep off the sun. Liam added camping gear, more food supplies, and a rifle with ammunition. "You will learn to shoot," he said when she looked at the weapon nervously. "Out here, you need to be able to defend yourself." They also purchased a gentle mare for Sarah, a dappled gray with kind eyes and a steady temperament. Liam spent an hour teaching Sarah the basics of riding, and though she was awkward at first, she quickly gained confidence. That night they stayed at the hotel, and Sarah luxuriated in the simple pleasure of a real bed and a bath. She washed the dust from her hair, scrubbed her skin clean, and when she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Her face was sun-browned, her eyes bright with an excitement she had not felt in years. She looked alive. The next morning, dressed in her new practical clothes, Sarah met Liam outside the hotel. His eyes widened when he saw her, and a slow smile spread across his face. "You look like you were born to this," he said. "I feel like a different person," Sarah admitted, "like I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be." They left Fort Stockton behind, riding side by side now that Sarah had her own horse. The landscape grew more dramatic with each passing mile, the hills steepening into mountains, the desert giving way to pine forests at the higher elevations. The air grew cooler and cleaner, and Sarah felt her spirits soar with every mile they traveled. Liam proved to be a patient teacher, helping her improve her riding skills and teaching her to shoot. He set up targets and showed her how to hold the rifle, how to breathe and squeeze the trigger rather than pull it. "Shooting is about patience and control," he explained. "You do not force it. You line up your shot, breathe out slowly, and let the rifle do its work." By the end of the week, Sarah could hit a target more often than not, and she felt a fierce pride in her growing competence. This was a world where skills mattered, where her ability to contribute was valued. It was so different from Brownsville, where her worth had been measured by her marriageability and her ability to keep a house. On the 8th day, they crested a ridge, and Liam reined in his horse, pointing to the valley below. "There," he said, "that is home." Sarah looked down at the valley spread before them. It was a bowl of green nestled among pine-covered mountains, with a creek running through the center, and a small log cabin visible near a stand of aspens. Smoke curled from the chimney, and Sarah realized Liam must have arranged for someone to prepare the cabin before their arrival. "It is beautiful," she breathed. "Come on," Liam said, his voice warm with pride. "Let me show you properly." They rode down into the valley, and as they approached the cabin, Sarah could see more details. It was larger than she had expected, solidly built from pine logs with a stone chimney and a wide porch. There were outbuildings too, a small barn, a smokehouse, and what looked like a root cellar built into the hillside. A man stepped out of the cabin as they approached, an older fellow with gray hair and a weathered face. He grinned when he saw Liam. "About time you showed up," he called. "Was starting to think you had gotten lost." "Not likely," Liam said, dismounting. "Sarah, this is Tom Whitehorse. He's a friend of mine who watches over the place when I'm gone. Tom, this is Sarah Prescott." Tom tipped his hat to her. "Pleasure, madam. Liam sent word ahead that you would be coming, so I have stocked the cabin and got everything ready." His eyes twinkled with humor. "Been a long time since this place had a woman's touch." "Thank you, Mr. Whitehorse," Sarah said, climbing down from her horse with only a little awkwardness. "Just Tom, madam," he said. "I will be heading out now that you are here. Got my own place about 5 miles south if you ever need anything." He shook Liam's hand, nodded to Sarah, and mounted his horse. Within minutes, he had disappeared into the trees, leaving them alone. Liam turned to Sarah, suddenly looking uncertain. "Well, this is it. Do you want to see inside?" Sarah nodded, her heart pounding. This was the moment of truth, the point where she would have to decide if she could truly imagine making a life in this remote, beautiful, challenging place. The cabin's interior was simple but comfortable. There was a main room with a stone fireplace, a table and chairs, and a rocking chair near the hearth. A kitchen area occupied one corner, with a wood stove and shelves for supplies. 2 doors led off the main room, presumably to bedrooms. "That is the room I use," Liam said, pointing to one door. "The other was going to be a guest room, but I never got around to furnishing it properly. You can have it, or we can share the main room if you prefer. Whatever makes you comfortable." Sarah walked slowly through the cabin, running her hand over the smooth wood of the table, looking out the window at the stunning view of the mountains. Everything was clean and well-maintained, and despite its simplicity, it felt like a home. "Tell me true, Liam," she said, turning to face him. "If I stayed, what would our life be like? What would my days look like?" Liam considered the question carefully. "Honestly, it would be hard work. We would wake early, tend the animals, hunt and gather food, preserve meat for winter. There would be repairs to make, firewood to chop, water to haul. In winter, we might be snowed in for weeks at a time, and we would be alone, just the 2 of us, for long stretches." "That sounds wonderful," Sarah said softly. Liam blinked in surprise. "Wonderful. Most women would find it terrifying." "I am not most women," Sarah said. She walked toward him, closing the distance between them. "Liam, I have spent my whole life living by other people's rules, trying to fit into a mold that was never right for me. I've been small and careful and afraid, measuring my worth by what others thought of me. But here, with you, I feel like I can finally breathe, like I can be myself without apology." "And who is that self?" Liam asked, his hands coming up to rest on her waist. "Someone strong," Sarah said. "Someone capable. Someone who is not afraid to wear black to her own wedding because she honors where she came from. Someone who can learn to shoot and ride and survive in wild country. Someone who can love a man who lives life on his own terms." Liam pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "You already are all those things, Sarah. You always have been. You just needed a place where those qualities were valued." Sarah looked up at him, at this strong, honorable, extraordinary man who had seen her when no one else did. "I want to stay, Liam. I want to build a life with you here. I want to marry you, not because I need security or because I have no other options, but because I love you." Liam's eyes widened. "You love me?" "I love you," Sarah confirmed. I think I have loved you since the moment you told me I was brave for wearing black to my wedding, since the moment you understood what no one else did. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you see the world, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you, if you will have me." Liam did not answer with words. Instead, he cupped her face in his large, calloused hands and kissed her with a passion that made her knees weak. Sarah melted into him, wrapping her arms around his neck, pressing herself against the solid warmth of his body. The kiss deepened, becoming less gentle and more urgent, and Sarah felt desire unfurl in her belly like a flame-catching tinder. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Liam rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Sarah Prescott," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I have loved you for 3 years, and I will love you until my dying day. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and my partner and the person I share every sunrise and sunset with for the rest of my life?" "Yes," Sarah said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." Liam picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her again, softer this time, full of promise and tenderness. "We should go to Fort Davis tomorrow," Liam said. "There's a chaplain at the military post who can marry us. Unless you want a big wedding with guests and a ceremony?" Sarah thought about the wedding she had almost had in Brownsville, with its judgmental guests and disapproving whispers. "No," she said firmly. "I want simple. I want just us making promises to each other. That is all I need." "Then that is what we will have," Liam promised. That night they slept in separate rooms, but Sarah lay awake for hours, too excited to sleep. Tomorrow, she would become Liam's wife. Tomorrow, her new life would truly begin. She thought about the black dress still packed in her belongings, about the scandal she had caused in Brownsville, about the path that had led her here. She regretted none of it. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Sarah dressed in her new clothes, braiding her hair neatly and trying to calm her racing heart. Liam was waiting outside, looking nervous and handsome in a clean shirt and trousers. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ready," Sarah assured him. They rode to Fort Davis, a journey of about 2 hours. The military post was small but well maintained, and the chaplain, a kindly man named Father Benedict, agreed to marry them immediately. "Do you have rings?" he asked. Liam shook his head. "We left in rather a hurry, and I did not think to get them." "That is all right," Father Benedict said. "The promises you make are more important than the symbols." They stood in the small chapel, just the 3 of them, and Father Benedict led them through the simple ceremony. When it came time for vows, Liam took Sarah's hands in his. "Sarah, I promise to love you and honor you every day of my life," he said. "I promise to protect you and provide for you, but also to let you be strong and independent. I promise to see you, really see you, and to never take for granted the gift of your presence in my life. I promise to share my sunrise and my sunsets with you, my sorrows and my joys, my strength and my weaknesses. You are my partner, my love and my home." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Liam, I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes. I promise to honor your past and build our future together. I promise to be brave when you need me to be brave, and to let you be strong for me when I need strength. I promise to love you completely without reservation for all the days of my life. You saw me when I was invisible, and you loved me when I did not know I was worthy of love. That is a gift I will never forget." Father Benedict smiled warmly. "Then, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride, Mr. Harrison." Liam kissed her softly, sweetly, and Sarah felt something settle deep in her soul. This was right. This was where she was meant to be. They signed the marriage certificate, thanked Father Benedict, and rode back to the cabin as husband and wife. When they arrived, Liam lifted Sarah from her horse and carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing. "Welcome home, Mrs. Harrison," he said. "Home," Sarah repeated, savoring the word. "Yes, I think it is." That night they consummated their marriage in the simple bedroom, and Sarah discovered that passion between 2 people who truly loved each other was nothing like the duty she had been taught to expect. Liam was gentle and patient, attuned to her responses, making sure her pleasure matched his own. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Sarah's head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Are you happy?" Liam asked softly. "Happier than I have ever been," Sarah assured him. "This feels right, Liam. Like everything that came before was just leading me to this moment." "I feel the same way," Liam said. He stroked her hair absently, his voice thoughtful. "Sarah, I know this life will not always be easy. There will be hard times, cold winters, lean years, but I promise you, we will face them together." "Together," Sarah agreed. "That is all I need." The weeks that followed were a revelation. Sarah threw herself into learning the skills she would need to thrive in this new life. Liam taught her to hunt, to track, to read weather signs. She learned to cure meat, to preserve vegetables, to make soap and candles from tallow. Her hands, once soft from sewing, grew calloused from hard work, and she found she did not mind at all. She also discovered talents she had not known she possessed. She was a natural shot, able to bring down deer and elk with increasing regularity. She had a gift for reading the land, for understanding the patterns of animal movement and weather. And she was strong, far stronger than she had given herself credit for. As autumn deepened into winter, they prepared the cabin for the cold months ahead. They chopped cords of firewood, filling the sheltered space beside the cabin. They hunted and preserved meat, filling the smokehouse. They gathered wild onions and roots, storing them in the root cellar, along with sacks of flour and beans purchased from Fort Davis. The first snow came in early November, a light dusting that turned the valley into a wonderland. Sarah stood on the porch, wrapped in a warm wool shawl, watching the flakes fall. Liam came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on the top of her head. "Cold?" he asked. "A little," Sarah admitted, "but happy." "Good," Liam said. He turned her in his arms to face him. "Sarah, there is something I have been wanting to tell you." "What is it?" "When I stopped your wedding, I was terrified," Liam admitted. "I'd built up this scenario in my head where you would be grateful and fall into my arms, but I knew the reality was that you might tell me to go to hell, that you might choose Gerald and the life he offered, and I would have to live with that." "But I did not choose Gerald," Sarah pointed out. "No, you did not," Liam agreed. "You chose yourself. You chose freedom and possibility and the unknown. And then later, you chose me. But that is the thing, Sarah. You chose me not because you needed me, but because you wanted me. And that makes all the difference." Sarah understood what he was trying to say. "You wanted to be chosen for yourself, not as a rescue or an escape." "Exactly," Liam said. "And you did that. You have given me something I never thought I would have, a partner who is my equal, who chose this life with open eyes. I cannot tell you what that means to me." Sarah reached up and cupped his face, feeling the roughness of his beard, the warmth of his skin. "You have given me the same gift, Liam. You saw me when I was invisible. You valued me when I felt worthless. You offered me a life where I could be strong and capable and fully myself. How could I not love you for that?" They kissed in the falling snow, and Sarah felt a completeness she had never experienced before. This was love, real love, built on respect and admiration and genuine partnership. This was what she had been searching for without even knowing it. Winter settled over the valley in earnest, bringing deep snows and bitter cold. But inside the cabin, Sarah and Liam built a life together. They spent long evenings by the fire, talking and reading from the small collection of books Liam had accumulated over the years. They cooked together, learning each other's preferences and habits. They made love under piles of quilts, keeping each other warm through the frozen nights. And Sarah learned what it meant to be truly content. She did not miss Brownsville, did not miss the gossip and the judgment and the narrow confines of that life. Out here, in the wild mountains with the man she loved, she had found freedom. In February, when the worst of winter had passed but spring still felt distant, Sarah realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another few weeks to be certain, then told Liam one evening as they sat by the fire. "I think I am with child," she said quietly. Liam's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor," Sarah said. "My courses have not come in almost 3 months, and I have been feeling tired and a bit ill in the mornings." A slow smile spread across Liam's face, so broad and genuine that it transformed him. "A baby," he breathed. "Sarah, we are going to have a baby." "Are you happy about it?" Sarah asked, suddenly uncertain. They had not discussed children, had not planned for this possibility so soon. "Happy?" Liam crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. "Sarah, I'm overjoyed, terrified, but overjoyed. A child of ours, a little person who is part you and part me. How could I not be happy?" Sarah felt relief wash over her. "I'm happy too, scared, but happy." "We will figure it out together," Liam promised, "just like everything else." As spring arrived and the snow melted, revealing the green valley beneath, Sarah's pregnancy became more obvious. Her belly began to swell, and she felt the first flutters of movement that left her breathless with wonder. Liam was attentive and protective, insisting she not overwork herself, but Sarah refused to be coddled. She continued to work alongside him, tending their garden, hunting smaller game, preparing for the baby's arrival. In May, Liam rode to Fort Davis and returned with supplies: cloth for diapers, yarn for knitting baby clothes, and a carved wooden cradle he had commissioned from the post carpenter. "It is beautiful," Sarah said, running her hand over the smooth wood. "The baby will love it." "Our baby," Liam corrected, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his hands on her swollen belly. "I still cannot quite believe it is real." "It is real," Sarah assured him. She placed her hands over his, pressing his palms more firmly against her stomach. "Can you feel that? The baby is moving." Liam's face lit up with wonder as he felt the tiny movements beneath his hands. "Strong," he said, "like you." The baby arrived in late September, almost exactly a year after Sarah had run from her wedding. The labor was long and difficult, with only Liam and Tom Whitehorse's wife Maria there to help. But when Sarah finally held her son in her arms, all the pain was forgotten. He was perfect, with dark hair like his father and bright, alert eyes that seemed to take in everything. "What should we name him?" Sarah asked, exhausted but elated. Liam looked down at his son, his expression tender. "I was thinking we could call him James, after your father, if that would honor him." Sarah felt tears spill over. "James Harrison. Yes, I love it." They settled into life as a family of 3. James proved to be a healthy, happy baby, and Sarah discovered that she loved motherhood as much as she loved her wild new life. She would sit on the porch, nursing her son while watching the mountains turn gold and red with autumn colors, feeling more blessed than she had ever imagined possible. The years flowed by, marked by the changing seasons and the growing of their family. When James was 2, Sarah gave birth to twin daughters, Anna and Elizabeth, who filled the cabin with noise and laughter. 3 years later came another son, Thomas, who inherited his father's dark eyes and serious nature. Life in the mountains was hard, but it was good. Liam taught James to hunt and track, passing down the skills he had learned from the Comanche. Sarah taught the twins to read and sew, to identify plants and preserve food. Little Thomas toddled after his siblings, determined to do everything his older brothers and sisters did. Sarah never forgot where she came from, though. She kept her mother's black dress carefully packed away, and once a year, on the anniversary of her mother's death, she would take it out and hold it, remembering the woman who had shaped her and the journey that had brought her to this place. One evening, 15 years after their wedding, Sarah and Liam sat on the porch watching their children play in the twilight. James, now 15, was teaching Thomas to track rabbits. The twins, 13 and vibrant, were practicing their shooting, competing to see who could hit the target more consistently. "Do you ever regret it?" Liam asked quietly. "Leaving Brownsville, choosing this hard life?" Sarah looked at him, at his silver-streaked hair and the lines that years of sun and wind had etched into his face. He was still strong, still capable, but there was a gentleness in him now that had grown with fatherhood. "Never," she said firmly. "Not once, not even for a moment. This life, our family, this love we have built together, it is everything I never knew I wanted, everything I needed." "Even though it is hard," Liam pressed, "even though we have struggled through harsh winters and lean years, even though we are so isolated, so far from everything you knew?" "Especially because of those things," Sarah said. She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Those challenges have made me strong. They have shown me what I am capable of, and they have shown me every day that I chose right when I chose you." Liam raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "I love you, Sarah Harrison. More now than the day I married you, if that is possible." "It is possible," Sarah assured him, "because I feel the same way." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children, watching the sunset behind the mountains, watching the first stars emerge in the darkening sky. This was the life Sarah had chosen, the life she had built with her own hands and her own courage. It was not the life anyone in Brownsville would have predicted for her. It was not safe or conventional or easy, but it was hers, and it was beautiful. Years continued to pass. Their children grew and eventually left to make their own ways in the world. James became a guide like his father, leading wagon trains through the mountain passes. Anna married a rancher near Fort Davis and gave Sarah and Liam their first grandchildren. Elizabeth became a teacher, bringing education to the scattered families of the Davis Mountains. And Thomas, following his own path, joined the Texas Rangers, working to bring law and order to the wild frontier. Sarah and Liam grew old together in their cabin in the mountains. Their hair turned silver, their bodies slowed, but their love remained constant. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, holding hands, watching the sunset, paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. One spring evening, when Sarah was 63 and Liam 68, he turned to her with the same serious expression he had worn the day he stopped her wedding. "Sarah, do you remember what I said that day? That you honored the past by wearing black to your wedding?" "I remember," Sarah said. "It was one of the kindest things anyone had ever said to me." "I want you to know that you have spent our entire life together, honoring the past while building the future," Liam said. "You honored your parents by living according to the values they taught you. You honored our love by choosing courage over comfort, and you honored yourself by never apologizing for being exactly who you are." Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. "And you, Liam Harrison, have honored me every day of our marriage by seeing me, truly seeing me, and loving what you saw. You gave me freedom and partnership, and a love I never dreamed possible." "No regrets?" Liam asked, echoing the question he had asked so many times over the years. "No regrets," Sarah confirmed. "Only gratitude for every moment, every challenge, every joy we have shared." They kissed, a soft, tender kiss that still held echoes of the passion they had discovered together all those years ago. And as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the world in shades of rose and gold, Sarah reflected on the path her life had taken. She had been the bride who wore black to her wedding, the scandal of Brownsville, the woman who threw away security for an uncertain future. But she had also been the woman brave enough to choose herself, to choose love, to choose a life lived on her own terms. And in the end, that made all the difference. The mountain man and the woman in mourning black had built something beautiful together. They had built a life, a family, a love that had weathered every storm and grown stronger with each passing year. They had honored the past while embracing the future, and in doing so, they had created something neither of them could have built alone. It was, Sarah thought as she sat on the porch with Liam's hand in hers, watching the mountains turn purple in the gathering dusk, a life well lived, a love well earned, and she would not change a single moment of it. Years later, when their grandchildren asked about how they met, Sarah would pull out the black silk dress, carefully preserved all these years, and tell them the story. She would tell them about a wedding that never happened, about a mountain man who understood what no one else did, and about the courage it took to choose the unknown over the comfortable. And she would tell them the most important lesson of all, that honoring the past does not mean being trapped by it, that you can carry your memories and your losses with you while still moving forward into new possibilities. That love is not about settling or compromising, but about finding someone who sees you completely and loves you anyway. The black dress became a family treasure, passed down through generations, a symbol of the courage and conviction that had founded their family. And every bride who wore it on her wedding day did so with pride, knowing the story behind it, understanding what it represented. Not mourning for what was lost, but celebration of what was found. Not an ending, but a beginning. Not a scandal, but an act of profound courage. And in the Davis Mountains of Texas, where the air was clean and the stars shone bright, The legacy of Sarah and Liam Harrison lived on. A legacy of love and strength, of honoring the past while building the future, of two people who found each other against all odds and built something extraordinary together. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West, forged in hardship and joy, and lasting until the very end of their days. And it all began with a woman in mourning black and a mountain man who understood that she was not grieving for the future, but honoring the past that had made her who she was. That understanding, that moment of true seeing, had changed everything. It had given Sarah the courage to choose herself, to choose love, to choose a life of passion and partnership over one of comfortable emptiness. And it had given Liam the family and home he had been searching for since the day he lost his own. Together, they had proven that the greatest love stories are not about finding someone to complete you, but about finding someone who sees you as already whole and wants to stand beside you anyway. Someone who honors your past, believes in your future, and loves you completely in the present. That was the gift Sarah and Liam gave each other on that October day in 1873 when he stopped her wedding and she chose to ride away with him into the mountains. And it was a gift that lasted the rest of their lives, growing richer and deeper with each passing year until the very end.